Don't stop.
Hey, thanks for joining me on the Everything and Anything and a Bit Gay podcast. I just finished doing a news episode for my Listen Up Girl podcast, and all this political news that it just keeps continuing to come, all this anti-LGBTQ plus news, it just makes me so angry. It's like, how did we get here? Not to get too political, but I just don't understand how when Obama was in office, we were just all becoming more unified, I think. Maybe I'm just delusional. But there's so many things wrong with this country now. It's depressing. But I don't want my podcast to be depressing. So that's why I'm bringing you a guest today that has a whole story of how he was basically arrested for DUI and was not really drunk. Went along with the whole thing. He's a black male that grew up in Alabama who's gay, and he wants to do something about what happened to him when he was arrested. His story is amazing. He grew up in a religious family also, and Jehovah's Witnesses, and his story is remarkable. When I got the request from his team to have him come on my show, I'm like, oh, do I want to do this political show? Do I want to do somebody that's, going to talk about the negativity that's happening? I talk about all the negativity and stuff that's happening on my other podcast, Listen Up Girl, where I do LGBTQ news a couple of times a week. It's becoming more and more because there's so much news. But I'm like, do I want to integrate that into this format, into this show? And I looked at his profile and I read the message, and I'm like, I do actually want to, because he has an amazing story. His story is, again, a gay black man growing up in Alabama in a super religious household or family, and was arrested for something he didn't even do. And the great thing is that he is fighting back, and he is running for Senate. He has started a campaign and he is running for Senate. And I am 100% behind him. And I hope he wins. And I am going to give you updates throughout between now and midterm elections. And I will let you know if you want to help him win this election and you want to donate to it, his campaign. I will let you know how to do that. And just even if you don't live in Alabama, you can still donate. So my husband is helping some candidate in Iowa who's running for the Democratic Party, and he's doing all this volunteer work for this person. So if you would like to help somebody, it's not necessarily about where you live anymore. It's about making sure we can flip the House or the Senate to be Democratic. Because if we can get one of those, or God, could you imagine getting both of those? Some of this craziness will stop that's going through this country. All these anti-LGBTQ bills, all these things about transgender people, about, we can prevent a lot of these things, or hopefully prevent some more of these things from happening. It's going to be a very interesting year for the next year while we wait for midterm elections. Also, as the Supreme Court takes up the same-sex marriage, if they do take this case, which it looks like that they may take it, the one that Kim Davis, the woman that's been married 3 or 4 times and has 3 or 4 kids from different daddies, and she had one baby out of wedlock, and she cheated on another man, one of her first husbands or her third husband or something, and she's the one that's saying gay people or same-sex marriage shouldn't happen because the Bible doesn't say it. Well, lady, let me tell you something. The Bible also says, if you're following it, that you shouldn't be an adulterer and you shouldn't be having sex out of wedlock. And also, if I'm telling you what the gay Bible is saying, you shouldn't be dressing like you are a pilgrim either, because the way that you dress and those glasses that you wear and that nasty hair you have, Somebody needs to, you need to, I can tell you have no gay friends because if you did, they would tell you don't leave the house looking that way. Poor thing. Anyway, enjoy my interview with Dakarai. He is amazing. If you want to support him, and even if you don't live in Alabama, you should support him. Whether you don't have to give money. If you don't have money, there's other ways to support him. Go to his website, look for the description of this podcast or video, and see how you can support him because we need more people like him in the Senate representing our community. Thanks so much for listening and enjoy the episode. Hi, thanks for joining me on the Everything and Anything and a Bit Gay podcast. Today, I'm really excited for my guest. His name is Dakarai, and he has a long story that we are going to get into, and I have so many questions for him. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here, Zach.
So first of all, I want to talk about at the beginning. You grew up in Alabama. You grew up as a Jehovah's Witness. You're an African-American man, and you're gay.
Yes.
All that in the state of Alabama in the 80s and 90s. So tell me how it was growing up in Alabama with all those things on you.
Thank you for asking. It was all that I knew at the time. So that's one of the things that is so important is to realize many of us live within these bubbles and we don't know anything else. And that's what's so important about like getting these experiences to travel and to learn. And we're learning so much about how states are restricting what people can actually learn, right?
Yeah.
And that's how the acceptance starts. But my bubble was really church and school. And fortunately, my dad was in the Army. And with that, we were able to travel.
Good.
And we lived in California, Oklahoma, Washington State, and Germany all before third grade.
Wow.
And that kind of created the curiosity that led me ultimately to move to New York City and to kind of think bigger than what I grew up with and learning essentially that my life was an abomination.
Yeah. And, you know, I've read a little bit about how your parents did end up accepting you being gay. And so tell me about that. And how did you, well, let me step back a little bit. When did you know or think that you were gay yourself? Like what age?
I knew something was different in middle school. So whatever age that is.
Yeah.
And it was very confusing because again, you're in this bubble of right and wrong. And you're hearing preachers tell you about this is ultimately going to lead to your destruction if you don't follow a very defined way of living in the Bible or in their religious interpretations of the Bible. And I knew something was different, couldn't quite vocalize it. And then small things, mannerisms would seep out. And finally, my dad called a family meeting and basically sat everybody down and said, I think that you're gay. And I was asked
how old were you?
Middle school age, whatever that is.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And I said no, because of course that's the correct answer.
Yeah.
Right. And it wasn't really until college that I was able to vocalize who I was.
And did you know anyone that was gay other than yourself in the environment you were growing up in? So, or I should ask, of course there were gay people. My question really should be, was there anybody that was out to you other than, you know, that you had friends that were gay?
You know, it's a funny question because you don't have the language. Imagine it's like you're trying to describe a color, but you're blind, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't really have the language then. But in hindsight, now as a 43-year-old, I can say, oh, this person probably was gay 30 years ago, right? And one story that I'll never forget was my very first job was working at like CVS. And there was a patron that would come in very regularly. And one day he was not a she.
Okay.
And I realized as they were walking out of the convenience store that this was a person that had different gender
Yeah.
presentations.
Yeah.
And, you know, that was eye opening to me. I didn't know what that word meant or what
Yeah.
that word was.
And then at the end, just to kind of let listeners know, your family, when you did come out when you were in college to them, eventually they accepted it. And your father said to you about Will and Grace. Do you want to tell that story?
Yeah. Yeah. So that was a multi year journey.
Hmm.
So initially, I had moved to New York City and I was interning. And one of my childhood friends had also moved to New York, and he was very senior in the church.
Okay.
And he worked at the world headquarters in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And so I would see him. And then at some point, I stopped going to church, and word got back to Alabama that I was no longer attending. So my mom called me up to ask like what was going on, and that's kind of how the discussions started to come out. Not right away, but over a couple months because she just couldn't understand why I wasn't going to church.
Yeah.
And that was a very difficult conversation. So my mom and my dad created like a three-way call and again asked me what was going on. And when I told them, I said, I just can't continue to follow this faith because of who I am.
Yeah.
And I need to be true to that. My dad said, you're going to get AIDS and die.
Yeah.
And my mom said, I suspected it. And then from there, it was just kind of like a freeze for several years that I didn't want to come home to Alabama and really didn't speak very much to them. But what really ultimately thawed everything was when my grandfather was on hospice care and I
Hmm.
came home and I brought my boyfriend. And basically, the family, the extended family, everybody was there. So it was kind of like I didn't have to come out again. Everyone knew all at once.
Hmm.
And in that moment, I really felt accepted.
Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're not a Jehovah Witness any longer. You're not practicing that religion any longer.
I'm not. There was like this 20-year period where I didn't practice any religion. I didn't think that there was any religious home for me.
Hmm.
And in that faith, it really says that there's only one true religion. That's how it's set up.
Hmm.
So I had a hard time even thinking about other faiths.
Yeah.
And when I moved home to Alabama, one of my fellow alums from University of Alabama invited me to church here in downtown Birmingham. And I kind of went. I was a little bit reluctant, but I went. And I realized that was my new home. The first time I attended, the preacher, who was a woman, which was really exciting and different from me,
Yeah.
mentioned that they were preparing their floats for Pride. And I was just like, wait a minute, did I hear that?
Yeah.
Did I hear that right? And to be a part of a community that is so affirming and accepting, it's really been nice. So now I attend First Church, which is a United Methodist church here.
Okay. Great. It's funny that you said that your family said, "Oh, you're going to get AIDS and die." So when I was 21 or 22, when my mother asked me if I was sitting in the back. I was living with my parents again because I had a issue with a roommate and had to move back in from college and was living with them. So I must have been 21. And my mom, I was sitting by the pool in the backyard, and she comes out and she goes, "I need to ask you something." And I'm talking to my friend Gary, and I said, "Mom, don't ask me something you don't want to know." And she goes, "Your dad wants me to ask you." And I said, "All right, ask." And she goes, "Are you gay?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And she goes, "Is your friend Tony and Gary gay?" I go, "Yes, Mom. They're all gay. We're all gay." And she goes, "Oh my God." She goes, "Do you have AIDS?" And I said, "No, Mom, I don't have AIDS."
Oh.
She goes, "Do you want to be a woman?" I said, "No, Mom. Being gay does not mean that you want to be a woman." And she goes, "Do you know men that have become women?" I'm like, "Mom, I know transgender or whatever you called it back in the 90s. Yes,
Right.
I know people. I know men that are now women. Yes, that is people that I know and I'm
Yeah.
friends with."
Yeah.
And it took my dad, who grew up in the in Kentucky, Illinois area, and had a very, very religious Church of God father, Southern Baptist. Like, if my grandfather never would have accepted this if he was alive. And it took my dad about 6 months where we were living in the same house, not speaking or looking at each other. And then finally he came around and just, accepted it. So, and then, he met my husband, years later and loved my husband as much as he loved me. So I felt very
Oh,
lucky.
it
So,
takes a little bit of time. We have to be patient.
yeah, exactly. So that's awesome. Are you still with the same guy?
No, I
Okay.
am happily divorced and I'm a dog dad.
Okay. Looking for a new husband in the future, possibly, or no?
If it happens, it happens.
Okay. Are you living in Alabama now?
Yes, Alabama's home. So I moved back during the pandemic and just fell in love with it and being closer to my family. And it's changed so much. And it's interesting. People have these ideas about Alabama, but I always like to just kind of gag them a little bit. I'm like, well, my state representative is openly gay
Yeah.
and is a veteran as well. So we have very diverse stories here that I'm just trying to get out.
Yeah. My best friend lives in Alabama. She lived in Decatur and she just moved in with her mom who lives in Coleman. And she wants to live, I don't know where she wants to live. She's living with her mother because her father just died recently. So I've never gone to Alabama to visit her, and
Come
she
visit.
tells me this all the time. I need to come and visit, and it's not as bad as I would think. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe one day I'll visit. I take her to London and Paris and New York City, so I take her on vacation. That's how we see each
Oh,
other. So I'm like, yeah, we'll give up New York, and then you can. Then I'll give up New York for a year, and then I'll come to Alabama instead. She's like,
right.
no, no, forget it. I'd rather go to New York. So, um, so, so I want to go into a little bit and talk about something that happened to you in Michigan.
Yeah.
And I watched one of the interviews that you did with the Young Turks, or that they did about you, and I am not surprised, but it's still shocking. And so, tell that story about what happened.
Yeah. It shocks me to this day,
Mm,
right? To think about what happened. I was driving through Michigan and at the time I lived in Alabama and I was profiled by the Michigan State Police and put through 7 sobriety tests under the suspicion that I was driving under the influence of alcohol.
hmm
Then it became marijuana.
hmm
I tested negative for alcohol at the hospital after being handcuffed and arrested. And then they still jailed me. And in the jail, I was tortured. I was accused of trafficking drugs by way of ingestion through my stomach.
What?
I was forced to use the restroom publicly in the jailhouse. So imagine it's like a
Yeah.
theater in the round. And ultimately got out of jail and have not been able to receive justice from that night. My driver's license was confiscated for months. And of course, in the end, I tested negative for everything and the charges were dropped. But there's been no accountability for the troopers. And we are fighting this case now for a year and a half. And initially, it was dismissed by the judge due to qualified immunity. And that is one of the things that I'm really fighting against is this qualified immunity doesn't hold law enforcement accountable to us, the citizens. And essentially what they were able to do was to redact the video and edit the video in such a way that it was able to pass through a summary judgment. And this judge ultimately let them go scot-free.
And I watched the video, the body cam of the officer, and there was a moment where it went black.
Yes.
And and they kind of said something about I had some stash in here.
Uh-huh. Exactly.
So they
So
basically admitted what they were doing.
yeah, so that is the whole racket, Zach, is even with that caught on audio, even with the 3 minute search of his vehicle, not my vehicle, the trooper
Mhm.
spent 3 minutes searching through his vehicle, mentioning a stash, mentioning I'm going to refuse it. And what does that really mean? Refusal after I've done 7 sobriety tests in the coal. I submitted to a blood test, which I passed right away. Like, what would I possibly refuse, right? Besides a search in my car where they would then plant the stash. And even that, even the judge was able to look past that to dismiss the case. That's the racket that's happening in Michigan and why we've got to get rid of qualified immunity and hold these troopers accountable. And I've even started to write legislation that says, when we have these interactions with the police, all of the evidence needs to be released to us,
Mhm.
as in my case, the victim, immediately without redactions. They sat on my audio, video, body cam for 5.5 months. Can you imagine the editing you can do in 5.5 months,
Yeah.
let alone 5 minutes now with the technology available on our smartphones,
Yeah.
right? So that's that's not how we're going to have a stable society if we can't even trust our police.
What do you think I mean, is it just that they're racist? Is that what it is? That they're just profiling? Are they just looking to get a case that they can, or just to, they've got I don't know, if they have a quota? Like, what do you think the reason is? Like, why would somebody want to go through all this trouble to ruin somebody's life or to potentially
Yes,
ruin somebody's life? I
right,
mean, you get arrested for a DUI, your license is suspended, right? Or drugs, you got a record then. Future employment may be an issue. Living somewhere, getting, your entire life could change because they're doing this. And there's
right.
like 1,000 other criminals that are on the road that are real criminals. Like, why not get them? So, have you ever thought about like why do they do this?
Well, it's complex. I think we've got to look at the laws around what incentives are given to troopers, for example, for getting drug charges, because clearly that's, more prestigious than,
Mhm.
say, just getting a DUI,
Yeah.
right? So, are we aligning the incentives with serving the community? That's my first question. But your question is, was it racist? Was it racial profiling? I think it was all of the above. There was even an aspect of homophobia. So, the whole interaction starts with the two troopers making fun of my name. So my name is Dakarai, and it is an African name that actually means happiness. And the black officer, so I'm going to add some more complexity here. It was a black officer and a white officer. The black officer starts making fun of my name with this very exaggerated and embarrassing accent.
Really?
Yes, this is on the dash cam, their dash cam, before they even stop me. Then the white trooper starts calling me Daiquiri, Daiquiri. I hope you're not drinking daiquiris. So then they pull me over, and the white trooper starts to infer that I was drinking alcohol because he's already had that predetermination.
Yeah.
And then he does something that's really interesting. He says, "Oh, well, I smell something fruity on your breath. It's smelling kind of fruity in here, and something else." And that's a homophobic
Oh,
slur.
yeah,
There
for
was
sure.
absolutely no alcohol on my friend, on me. They allowed my friend to park my vehicle. I tested negative for alcohol and drugs. So there was nothing fruity in the car. No one smelled fruity at all. And after the incident, we scoured their social media and we found Trooper Kenya had years of homophobic. That is part of the lawsuit. Yeah, it really does. So it's all of the above, and we've got to look at the incentives around policing, ensure that they're aligned for us, that they truly are aligned to protecting us, and not revenue generation either. We've seen that as well with speeding tickets and other types of things.
Yeah. I mean, is he still working? That
Oh
both
yeah,
those places?
there were no repercussions, and every step along the way, the Michigan State Police PR machine has denied any wrongdoing. In fact, to this day, they say that that was a professional interaction.
Interesting.
Yes. And there was supposed to be an investigation into social media. It never happened. There was no findings shared with us. And we are now waiting for our day in court with the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is one level below the U.S. Supreme Court.
And do you have like all his social media whenever he was saying all these things? I'm assuming you got screenshots of all that in
Oh,
case they delete.
yes.
Okay, good.
Oh, yes. We have dozens and dozens of screenshots. And that was another thing. The way the judge handled that was, well, there's no proof that he actually posted this. So every step along the way, I almost turned to my lawyer and said, is he the defense attorney for the Michigan State Police? Because this is why we need a trial, right? We
Yeah.
don't need a summary dismissal. There are too many questions that ultimately need to be decided by a jury.
And we'll be right back. Okay, and now back to the show. And so you're taking them to court. And what else are you kind of doing? Are you running for Senate?
There you go. So we've got to change the laws. That was my clear um, acknowledgement as I saw how broken
Hmm.
the whole political apparatus was in Michigan. Like, I literally took their evidence, presented it to the leadership, had multiple meetings with Governor Whitmer's office, my local state rep, Joey Andrews, even the attorney general, so Dana Nezel, all are aware of this matter. And the most that I can get back from them is that this is a legal matter and they don't have jurisdiction. And we need to let this play out through Michigan State Police's fake internal investigation.
Yeah,
So
because it is fake, I'm sure.
it absolutely is. We got a 3 sentence statement clearing the troopers.
Hmm.
So it was a completely ridiculous internal investigation, and the leadership are not doing their job. So I said, you know what? I'm going to do the job for you and position myself to create the laws to protect the public. So this type of thing does not happen.
And so you're in Alabama, which is a red state. It's tough for Democrats in that state. And so do you feel good about it?
Well, we just did some internal polling, and I am the clear front runner on the Democratic side.
Wow, good.
47% of respondents have selected me as their candidate for the U.S. Senate in a poll of Democratic leaning voters. So that is a great start very early in this process, more than a year out. And we are building momentum. Today, I just got featured in the Advocate magazine. So
Wow,
this is,
congratulations. That's
yes,
amazing.
yeah. So this has become a national discussion and race. And it's going to be a very exciting campaign over the next year.
Wow, that's amazing. So midterms next year are going to be a life-changing thing for this country. I'll just tell you that my husband and I are ready to buy a house. We're in Massachusetts, so we're in a little bit of a bubble ourselves in some ways, but we want to buy a house and we are not buying a house now until after midterms
Really.
because even though we live in a very liberal state, if the Supreme Court takes the same-sex marriage, we would still be married in the state of Massachusetts, but we go to Illinois or Kentucky where my brother lives, and we wouldn't necessarily be considered married there.
Uh-huh,
So
uh-huh,
if we go
uh-huh.
visit him and we get in an accident, we're in the hospital, would I be allowed to visit my husband in the hospital in Kentucky?
Right.
No.
Right.
Whenever one of us passes away, will the other person get the Social Security that I worked so hard, things like that we wouldn't have. And, my husband is having a little bit of a mental health breakdown over the way the country is being run. So he is a gay Jewish man, and you know, luckily, like I said, we live in a very liberal state, but it's gotten to his head that something horrible is going to happen to the LGBTQ
Really.
plus. Because I mean, if you look at like what they're doing in Texas, a transgender person can't use the bathroom anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy things like this that they're focusing on. They're erasing crosswalks with rainbow colors in Florida. This is
I
what we're
saw that.
focusing on. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't want to get too political, but this is just insane.
Oh, yeah.
There's more important things in this world, and we're focusing on crosswalks and a person using the bathroom. Like,
Right.
it's insane to me.
And same here in Alabama.
Yeah. Oh, it is the same.
Oh, absolutely. So the big thing here, one of the key contenders in this race is the Attorney General. and he wakes up in the morning and thinks about how he can bash trans people. So the big thing is fighting gender affirming care, fighting representations and discussions of trans people. They exist, right? You know, this is a complete breakdown.
Yeah.
And we've got to get leaders in place that can speak for all of us and represent all of us.
Do you feel good about midterms next year? Like, how are you feeling about the country and with midterms? Do you think it's going to turn things around?
I think that there is a strong desire for something new next year. And it's still quite a ways away for people to wrap their minds around an election a
Hmm.
year plus out. But I do want to challenge the leadership on the Democratic side to be more vocal
Hmm.
and to synchronize the messaging and to ensure that there is the right turnout.
Yeah.
So it still feels very whack a mole. And there are three or four personalities I'm sure we can all think of that are kind of leading their own messaging around the issues here. But I'm not hearing very much from our formal elected leaders in a way that I think inspires confidence. Not
We
yet.
need about 150 Jasmine Crockett's up there talking. That's what we need.
Yeah.
Because as vocal as she is, that's what we need more of. So,
Yes.
and yeah, I mean, that's the only way I think that we're going to make a difference in this country, or turn it back to where people have actually rights or equal rights again. So,
Mhm.
so you're going full headed with this. It sounds like to run for Senate next year, and you feel good about 47% poll is pretty good, and
That's
getting
very good. A year plus out, first
yeah.
time running, and that's against two straight white men. So those are my opponents on the
Are they
Democratic
Democrats or
side.
on the okay, two white?
On the Democratic side. So this
Okay.
is a poll of left leaning voters. Now, the messaging will start to become broader
Hmm.
as we move into the new year and move towards the general election. But that's a good start. And we're building coalitions everywhere. So going to churches, synagogues, mosques, everywhere that there are people, young
Yeah.
people going to nightclubs, right? So this is going to be a coalition we've never seen before, younger, black or queer. And we have a real opportunity here. We have such low turnout. So if we can just get that turn up out just up a few percentage points, it could make the difference.
Yeah. That's awesome. I mean, I will promote you as much as you want. You can come back on closer to
I'd love
midterms
to.
and promote yourself again because you've got to win. I mean, we need those voices in our government. So, when is your court coming up? I know it's probably scheduled way out, but when is that happening?
You know, it's moving really quickly.
Oh,
So the state police had to respond with the brief to the appeals court just a couple days ago, actually, last week. So now that the appeals court has both briefs, they will review those. And what we're finding is post COVID, a lot of times they'll make judgments just off of the briefs. So we
oh,
might not even get pulled in. So we'll see how they proceed with that. And then from there, the hope is that they will push the matter back into the court and give us our day to really speak to what happened and allow a jury to decide. This is a decision for a jury to decide after we go through discovery, after we look at the videos and ensure that the videos are validated, right? That's really important that we're looking at real evidence, not things that have been edited.
yeah. Let's talk about the memoir, Don't Flush. Tell
Yeah.
me about that.
Yeah. So Don't Flush is the name of the book. And we talked a little bit earlier about my experience in the jailhouse, and it was so traumatic. And that's one of the kind of moments that I'll never forget is that moment when it was humiliating. Um, when I was forced to use the restroom publicly in the jailhouse and told not to flush because clearly they wanted to gather evidence or fabricate more evidence from that night. And part of my therapy to get over that experience was writing and talking about the experience. And that's what spawned the book. So it is, I would say, 70% focused on that night. So it's
Mhm.
my first person account of that night, reconstructed with body and dash cam and the experiences of my passenger, my friend, in the car. And then it pivots to like, what do we do next? How do we take this experience and ensure it doesn't happen to other people?
Hmm.
And my decision to run and the policies that I will champion for all Americans. So ensuring that we have a motorist bill of rights that protects all of us when we're on the road. But beyond that, thinking about all those systems that are broken, not just criminal justice, but healthcare, education, economic opportunity. And I walk through what I will do for Americans if elected in
That's
that book.
awesome. And did you feel very vulnerable kind of when you were writing this book? Like, I mean, you have to really like to write a book and talk about that night. And I mean, you really got to open yourself up. How was that? Was that difficult?
Oh, it was so therapeutic because, wow, in speaking to psychologists afterward and
Hmm.
my own therapist, I realized I actually was suffering PTSD.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
the incident happened at about 3 a.m. And so after the incident, my body was on this clock. Imagine every night waking up at 3 a.m. and going into defense mode and not being able to go back to sleep every single night. So getting this down on paper, talking about it, I finally was able to start sleeping again
Hmm.
and embrace some degree of normality.
Yeah.
And you're right. It was just, it went beyond that night of April 10th, 2024. I was actually able to talk about childhood abuse and, just a little bit about that. I believe for a very long time, thinking about my religious upbringing, that abuse made me gay and, tainted me. And
Hmm.
I never processed it as I was the victim of child abuse. And it allowed me to talk about that for the first time beyond having a discussion with my mother. I had never told anyone else about it. And I talk a lot about family history and trauma as well. And I juxtapose a night in 1957 when my grandparents were riding and were apprehended or nearly apprehended by the KKK.
Oh my God.
And we carry these generational trauma and learnings through the family.
Do you think Alabama is changing at all? Or is it, I mean, again, I've driven through Alabama before when I was younger. I've never really visited there. My friends lived there for 20 years. She says it has changed. She says that she knows, gay people now, and her daughter is dating a black man, and nobody cares, And so yeah, I don't know. She makes it sound like it is different, but what is yours? Tell me what you think.
Oh, I love my state and I wouldn't I would not be here if I didn't think we were at least moving in the right direction. We have work to do like every part
Yeah,
of this nation,
yeah.
but that's an interesting point about your friend. I remember when I moved to New York and I lived in New York for about 15 years. I started coming back home once the relationship with my family improved. And I remember going to the mall and when I got home to my mom's house, I said, "Oh my gosh, there's so many mixed couples,"
Yeah.
and I was like, "Wow, like it has changed a lot since the '80s." So we're moving in the right direction. Now, can we expedite that movement? I'd love to see that. And like I mentioned a little bit earlier, my state representative is an openly gay man. We have gay people in all levels of our government. Some are more out than others.
Hmm.
That's normal, frankly. And I think we have a real good opportunity here.
Yeah. I'll just tell you that whenever my friend moved there, maybe it's been more than 20 years. She's lived there for 30 years, probably actually. And we grew up in Miami together, so we grew up in a
Mm.
very diverse city, and there was there was so we went to school with every type of person in the world. Our junior high and high school, there was it was not just a bunch of white people where we went to school. But when she said she moved there, I remember her calling me, telling me, because her husband's family lived in, I don't know, like Birmingham or Coleman or somewhere like that. And she said, "Oh, we drove through this town and it's scary here." And I said, "Why? What happened?" She goes, "There was a sign that says no black people after dark." I mean,
Oh,
this was 30 years ago. So
okay.
but she's just like, she goes, I don't, she goes, I asked my husband, is that real? And he goes, yeah, some towns are like that. And she's just like, where did I move? Like, why? She was like, this is crazy. So, she says it's changed. I'm glad to hear that you said it changed also.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I'm hoping that once you get elected, you can get in there and get some of these other people that are, I won't say any names, but some of the other ones that are in the closet and that are so homophobic, even though they're gay themselves. I'll just say the word ladybug, and I'm sure you know who I'm talking about. Get some of these people to step out and say who they really are, and maybe, or at least stop them from trying to like be so anti LGBTQ plus
Right.
whenever they fall in that category, which is crazy to me.
I agree. So representation matters. That proximity matters.
Mhm.
And we've seen that in our family stories, right? It took a little bit of time. So that is something I'm committed to doing, is showing up and helping people realize that I'm not the boogeyman,
Yeah.
and I'm here for all Alabamians, and I bring diverse perspectives and lived experiences.
Yeah. I am rooting for you. I will promote you so much on my channels and social media. Do you have a website up yet for people to do
Yes.
donations? Tell us what that is,
Yes.
and I'll put it in the description of this
Oh, perfect.
podcast as well.
Great. And I will email it to you as well. And it is
Perfect.
DakariLarriett.com. And then we're all over social media. So Dakari Larriett on every platform you can think of.
And I just want to tell voters, even if you're not in Alabama, making a donation for his campaign is the right thing to do because we need representation across the entire country. So my husband is actually helping someone that is in Iowa trying
Okay.
to win the election, and he's doing all this stuff for them. And we live in Massachusetts, and he's like, "Yeah, because we got to get that person in office. Like we
Yes.
need this across the country." So even if you're not in Alabama, go and support him. Go to his website again. It will be in the description of the podcast. Donate, volunteer for him. Just do whatever you can because we need more people like you in office
Yes.
to make this country better. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. You are a survivor, and I just love having people that are inspirational like you on my show. I love it that you are fighting back and that you are holding these people accountable for what they did to you. And I hope justice is served for them and they get what they deserve. So
Yeah.
it's horrible, and I'm really sorry that happened to you. But everything happens for a reason, and I think your reason is that you're going to be representing the state of Alabama, and I want you back on my show whenever you actually win, or if you want to come
Yes.
on before that again and talk about how it's going,
We have a
and we can
year to
get
go.
yeah, we can we'll have you on next September if you want, and try to get more people out there to vote because everybody has to vote. So please, if you're
Yeah.
listening to this, most likely you agree with what we're talking about. So please vote next year. We need everybody to vote. So
Yes, this is a national movement, and thank you so much for the support, Zach. And yeah, get involved any way you can. If it's a donation or volunteering, we're going to have phone banking really soon. You can do
yeah,
that from anywhere. So we have this really cool technology that allows people to call and tell people about the campaign and get them excited.
you're awesome. And thank you so much for being on. And be sure to subscribe and leave a comment. And I will put all of his social media and websites and everything in the description. So follow him, donate to him, and do all that good stuff and support our community. So thank you so much for being on.
Thanks, Zach.